Hey UConn Nation, it's KK Arnold here. If you're looking for the latest UConn women's basketball content, go subscribe to listen up to Phil and Ryan. Go Huskies!
Thank you, KK. Phil and Ryan, listen up. And Ryan, this episode, a very special guest on not on the line, but on the screen with us, Ryan. We have Emily Adams from the Hartford Courant. We want to welcome her, Ryan. She was named a winner of the 2024 Rising Star Award by the U.S. Basketball Writers Association. So, Emily, not too long into business, I assume, but it's like you've seen it all of 20, 30 plus years of women's basketball. Ryan and I enjoy reading your coverage so much, and we can't thank you enough for coming on with us today.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me. I've been around the block quite a bit and not a long time at all.
All right. So we want to start off, obviously, talking about, and I love this because we're going into the season. Obviously, we're on October 8th recording this. So we want to start off with you. We'll alternate back and forth. I know Ryan has a lot for you in just a short amount of time. Uh, I want to start off with, I caught some podcasts of you, and one was about a previewing, I believe, a South Carolina and a UConn game. Obviously, that's become a rival nowadays. Not on the schedule though this season, but I enjoy this talk so much because we're not previewing just one game. We're not looking at just one specific matchup. I want to start off with one of the hot topics Ryan and I have been talking about all off season, and that's life without Paige Bueckers. Since covering this team, I just want to see how you feel like it'll just work all around the offense from the defense. And how do you think the shift from the no life Paige Bueckers will be?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a huge loss. Like they'll tell
Mm,
you that inside the program, that they're feeling it during this preseason, even still.
mm,
It's just I think, obviously like the on-court stuff is a huge deal, but I think like the biggest thing that you lose in losing Paige is just sort of that voice of the team and the leadership.
mm,
And she was kind of that person for them from the time she got on campus. And this year, they don't have like a clear person that is like, this is the leader of our team. And so I think that's the thing that is going to be the most difficult to replace, is going to be the hardest to figure out. Like they brought back so many players, they have so much talent. It's just kind of, can they can they put those pieces together in a cohesive way? And I think that's where you'll miss Paige the most.
Yeah, I mean, like Phil said, we've been talking about that a lot during the all season about the leadership after losing Paige Bueckers. I've seen a lot of articles about who's going to be the next leader for this team. Will it be AZ Fudd stepping up, Caroline Ducharme? So I just wanted to know, who do you think is going to kind of step into that role that Paige Bueckers had, not only on the court, kind of leading the plays, leading the team, but even on the sidelines as well, in the huddles, on the benches, kind of just being that overall voice for the leadership for the team this season.
Yeah, I mean, I think Caroline is someone whose name comes up a lot, in like from players and coaches. They've talked about her kind of becoming like a second coach over the last couple of years, having to watch so much from the sideline, but still like staying involved in that way. So I think she's a big one vocally, especially because she's so experienced. With like AZ and Sarah, I think both of them are going to play a role in it as well. I think they're, again, like it's their leadership looks very different from how Paige's looks. Neither of them are super vocal. But like we've heard from Gino that Sarah has come in this year a lot more vocal and like a lot more willing to kind of dictate to, especially like the underclassmen. And like the same thing with AZ, I think it's a work in progress for both of them, just kind of getting comfortable in that because they haven't had to be. Uh,
Yeah.
and then I think too with like KK Arnold and Ashlyn Shade, I think both of them are kind of feeling like upperclassmen now, finally. It feels like they've been here forever, even if it's been 2 years. And I think both of them too have that like ability to kind of be vocal, to like communicate really effectively. They're both like very much experienced beyond their years. So I think it's going to be kind of a by committee type of thing, especially early on.
Yeah, you just again let us know when you have to go. We appreciate all your time. We plan for about 20, 25 minutes, if that's fine. I want to go over. I did Rye be surprised on this one because usually Phil is never prepared. I went over a little bit of research last night. And prior to learning all about Sarah Williams, first of all, what do you think about that big transfer coming to UConn? Not only that, I looked at the average in her points scored per game, and it in fact increased in her last 3 years at Wisconsin. So I'm going to ask you what your thoughts are about that. And then obviously ESPN, I believe it was yesterday morning, I had to look, but brought out an article about the top 25 preseason. And they have mentioned the biggest transfer for each team in the top 25. And obviously, Sarah Williams was on that list for UConn at number one.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's huge, especially, you look at like, I think, Jenna Elfie and Ice Brady both kind of ended the year stronger than they started it.
Mm,
Uh, but, you know, again, it's like Gina's talked about a lot, needing more production from the front court outside of Sarah. Sarah is like going to be playing a little bit more as like a three, like doing a little bit more guard stuff this year. So you really need someone else to be kind of a dominant post presence. And I think Sarah like fills that hole perfectly. It's, she's a really effective scorer, which is something that they have not had in a couple of years in a post player. She's big, she's long, she gives them the ability to run bigger lineups if you can put, her and Jenna, her and Ice, her and Sarah, her and even like Ayanna Patterson on the floor at the same time. It's like there's going to be an adjustment period with her because Wisconsin, at Wisconsin, she was playing at a very different level than
mm,
she's transitioning to now.
mm.
The expectations were different, the culture was different. So I think there's going to be, and it's hard, like after playing 3 years in one place, getting really used to a system, really used to, a style, and then kind of trying to start from scratch in your last season. So I think there will be a learning curve with her. And I think as we get into like the second half of the season, that's where we're really gonna start to like see her what her ceiling looks like.
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting to see how Sarah Williams kind of fits into the team after, like you mentioned, you and Phil mentioned her playing with Wisconsin for three seasons. But we also have four new faces on the team. Of course, the other transfer, Kaylee Heckel, I've seen she's looked pretty good in these open practices, and now that UConn is practicing more often as we're getting close to that exhibition season opener. And then, of course, with the three recruits as well coming in from high school, just want to know what your expectations are for some of the recruits. We always try to guess throughout the off season how many minutes they're going to get, what their roles are going to be off the bench, who might even have a chance of starting at some point. So just kind of your expectations for all the newcomers on this team and what you think about the transfers as well.
Yeah, I mean, Gino is not the type to give freshmen heavy minutes unless they are, Sarah Strong caliber on day one. And
Yeah.
it's sort of like, so I think it'll definitely be limited early on. I think, someone like Gandy is going to be kind of more of a like a project. I think this is a development year for her. Um, at Khalees, he seems really excited about so far. I think she's a really interesting, KK is probably gonna step into that starting point guard role this year, is gonna be playing the, highest volume of minutes in that spot. And I think Khalees can kind of step into that like change of pace type of role that KK has had the last couple of years and kind of be that like spark off the bench. I feel the same way about Kaylee Heckel. I think like that trio of KK, Kaylee, and Khalees all complement each other really well, and we'll be able to kind of interchange and again like pick up the pace because they're all so quick and like to play that like fast paced style. And then Blanca is kind of a like a mystery, I feel like, to all of us still. It's
Yeah.
She's really like it's hard to find even like footage of her playing because she's been overseas for so long. Um but again, like they all seem really excited about her. Her skill set is really, really unique. She's also bigger. She's like 6'1", 6'2". So again, gives them a little more length than they've had the last couple of years. And she's been playing like at a professional level for since she was a teenager. So she's someone who I think like might have the ability to translate a little bit quicker and kind of won't have that freshman like growing pain that a lot of incoming freshmen go through. I think, yeah, once she gets comfortable in the system in kind of the NCAA style of basketball, which is super different from like FIBA play, I think she has the chance to kind of be the most impactful out of that group.
All right, I want to take the time very quickly before Ryan has another question for you. Now I know I'm feeding you a lot of info in just a short amount of time, so you have to stop me if I'm talking too much here for this specific question. As far as the schedule is related, I don't know if you're, as a writer, I don't know if you're heavily focused on the schedule, preseason, or I don't know, you go game by game, but I looked into it a little bit and I was curious because the out of conference games to me, there maybe I'm mistaken. Maybe Ride, you can talk on this too, but it seems like they're more stacked as far as ranked opponents than any other season. But because I looked at and right out of the gates, obviously is Louisville and their top transfer from St. Joseph's in Ziegler at Louisville. And you have Michigan, and then UConn has USC, who is without obviously Watkins for the entire season. Iowa, Tennessee, Notre Dame, so stacked right at ranked opponents. Uh, but then I also wanted to touch base with you on what you think about the in conference schedule because I took a look at some of those predictions. In the top five, they had obviously UConn, Marquette, Seton Hall, Creighton, and Villanova. So first of all, your biggest takeaways from the out of conference schedule. Which teams you think will give UConn run for the money as they call it? But then the in conference schedule. Anybody who could challenge, because obviously, if you know UConn, you know they're favored almost every year as far as the Big East. So, but any teams that could challenge them, because we have a lot of big names in conference: Skylar Forbes, Lee Volker, Jasmine Bosco. So, I don't know. Hopefully, you can draw something up for us where we can find some fun both in and out of conference.
Yeah, I think the non-conference, like losing that South Carolina game obviously sucks. I don't
Mm,
think like either school is necessarily happy with not having that game this year. It just like with the schedule, with the Big East going to 20 games this year, up from
mm,
18, they just didn't have room for it. Um, so I think it's tough not to have that game. But I think like the biggest game on the schedule to me is Tennessee, which is really cool. Like it's very cool to see that rivalry like really truly alive again. I think
yeah.
there's a good chance that that game is a top 10 game come
Mm,
February. I'm really high on Tennessee this year. I like them a lot.
yeah.
Um, and again, it's kind of, you're coming off sort of a revenge game off of last year where
Yeah. Right.
that, I mean, that Tennessee game, a lot of them talked about it even after the national championship, like that kind of flipped the switch
Yeah.
that shifted the rest of the season for them. So, that game's going to mean a lot. I think it's going to mean more than it has in a long time, which is, like I said, which is really cool. I
Yeah.
think in the fall, I mean, USC is sort of the marquee game, and I
Mm,
think USC is going to be a lot better than people are projecting right now. They brought in a really good freshman in Jazzy Davidson, freshman
mm,
guard. They've, lost a couple to the portal, but they brought back a lot of their, really good young players who were contributing, the most last year. So I think they still have a lot to work with without Juju. And then I mean, I kind of think Ohio State's being underrated as sort of like a sneaky like trap game sort of situation. Like they're gonna be a ranked team, I think. They again are still like lost some big names to the portal, but are still like very talented, always competitive. And that's kind of the first like real home game test that they're gonna get outside of that, weird Louisville game in Germany.
yeah.
So that's kind of what I have an eye on. In the Big East, I don't know, like it's like if they lose a Big East game, I'll be shocked. Like I think
Oh,
that's
Yeah.
sort of the baseline generally with Big East play at this point.
yeah.
I'm hopeful that like the revenue sharing stuff will kind of help bring some recruiting back into the Big East,
Mm,
especially on the women's side. But yeah, I mean, I think like Marquette, I think will be good again this year. They're kind of that perennial contender. Um, and I think they've got some weird their matchups fall in some interesting places in the schedule. Like their first game against them is right after they play at USC. So it's one of those where it's like, okay, maybe, if you're in a weird place coming back from LA, they can give them a game there. I feel like Villanova always like has like a close game with UConn every year, even if they're
Right.
not great. And Creighton is a weird, like Creighton has been the best team in the Big East behind UConn for like the last 4 years. They're like a perennial tournament team. But they lost almost their whole lineup from last year. They graduated a ton of upperclassmen who had been there 4 or 5 years.
Mm.
Um, so they're a big sort of question mark right now, but they're always
Mm.
really well coached. They're always really competitive. So I feel like they're kind of always one to watch as well.
Right.
Yeah, I know I was definitely disappointed to not see South Carolina on the schedule, but I think I told Phil earlier, maybe we can see them in March again. I know that'll be a great game if that can happen. Yeah, the Big East is definitely going to be interesting. I've been high on Creighton the last couple of years, like you mentioned, with all those talented guards and forwards that they have, the experience on their team. But I think UConn, like you said, can pretty much dominate the Big East again this year. But I wanted to ask you about the starting lineup for that game that you mentioned in Louisville, which is going to be an interesting one since it's all the way in Germany. But me and Phil like to have a starting lineup video every season where we try to predict who's going to be in that starting five. I know you had one article on how deep this UConn team is this season. It seems like they always have a lot of depth, but of course, last season they were able to stay healthy, and we got to see that depth kind of play out throughout the whole entire year. But what's your best guess as we've seen a couple of these practices so far? What's your best guess at who could be in the starting five, or maybe a surprise player midway through the season that could sneak into that starting five and really shape out to be kind of a key player on this team?
Yeah, I think the biggest question when you look at the starters right now is who kind of like whether Sarah Williams is gonna have that starting center spot from the beginning or whether it's gonna start kind of back with either Jenna or Ice and kind of be, Sarah's to claim later down the line. I think like a lot of that just kind of depends on like how well she acclimates over the next couple of weeks, how like comfortable she's able to get, in the system because obviously Ice and Jenna have been around, they know it already. You don't, have that transition period with them. Jana hasn't been practicing. She's dealing with like I think a quad or not a quad, a calf injury, like something minor. So just something like if she's not fully healthy, I would definitely expect it to be Sarah. Um, and then the other, I think the three locks are AZKK and Sarah Strong.
Yeah.
That fifth spot, I think, I, as long as she's healthy, I think that is Ashlyn Shades to lose. Like I mean, has the most starting experience of anybody besides AZ. She, has been just sort of such a reliable piece for them, especially if they're getting more vocal leadership from her. I think that's an important person to have on the floor in that starting group. But it also like again, like a lot of this is health dependent, but like if Caroline Ducharme is fully healthy, it wouldn't surprise me to see her thrown into a starting five here and there. We don't really know kind of what things are going to look like, what her minutes management is going to look like, what she's going to be able to do. Um, but again, everything that we're hearing is that when she plays, she looks awesome. Um, and then I think too, like, if they're playing around with some like matchup dependent things, if you want to run a bigger lineup, like someone like Blanca definitely kind of has the ability to crack in there. Same thing with Caroline, like both of them are bigger. Ashlyn obviously doesn't have that same kind of size, so you can kind of play with that if you want, a shooter versus somebody who can play a little bit more in the post to give you a little bit more length. Um, so I think they have a lot they can do with it this year, which has not really been the case the last couple of years. It's been sort of pretty clear who those five are. So yeah, I think they have options.
What is your take on? Like I said, I called the podcast. I can't think of the name right now, and I can't find the video. But you were sitting down talking to, I believe his name is Tyler DeLuca, maybe if that sounds familiar.
Oh
You're
yeah.
talking about that, yeah. And at the end there, you all had mentioned talking about South Carolina and UConn as far as a rival. How do you feel about them not being on the schedule this year? Do you still consider that a rival game then if they're missing off the schedule?
Yeah, I mean, you look at like UConn and Tennessee canceled their series for a decade, and that
Oh, that's true.
did not take
Yeah.
any shine off of that when it came back. I think it's
Yeah.
it's one of those things where it's just sort of like, uh, you know, it reminds me a little bit of, I mean, I think of what UConn and Tennessee were like back in the 90s, where it's sort of like these are national championship teams every year. Like
Right.
every year, if they're not in the Final Four, you're surprised. I think that's true
Right.
for it's true for UConn. It's become true for South Carolina in the last decade or so. And I think now, I mean, they've played for two national championships. Like it's not, to get national championship rematches is like not a thing that happens that often.
Mm.
It would not shock me if that is the national championship again this year. I think like South Carolina is my number one team in the country coming into this year. I think
Mm.
with the transfer additions they had. So I think like again, obviously, I think both schools would like to still be playing in the regular season. Like I don't think it was a like it nobody's dodging smoke or anything. It's just
No.
sort of like it just didn't work out with the schedule. They were under contract already to do Tennessee and Notre Dame, and they just couldn't make it work. But I think it like if we see that game in the tournament, like it will feel like a rivalry.
No.
But not to go off topic here, but I know earlier we were talking about the new faces, the three new recruits coming out of high school. And there's been a lot of questions in our comments about who we think that UConn is going to land their first recruit for the 2026 season, since we haven't gotten an announcement yet. But there's been a lot of names thrown out there. Olivia Vacosa, of course, Addison Bayorn came for a visit last week. Jersey Robinson. I think you had an article about it, but who do you think is going to be, one of those players that UConn can land for the 2026 season? What are the chances that UConn gets one or two of those big name players for next year?
Yeah, I think it's those three are kind of the names that I think are the ones to watch, especially like those are sort of like the top 15 kids that they're really still in on. And there's a lot of uncommitted kids still in this class, which I feel like is a little bit, I mean, I don't know super well, but it feels like it's late in the year for so many of them to be uncommitted. And UConn's also had sort of the luxury the last couple of years of like Khalees was a super early commit. She committed, I think like maybe ahead of her junior year of high school. She's been, she was locked in for a long time. Ice Brady was like that too, committed like after her sophomore year. Um, so they're having to wait a little bit this year. And I think we saw that last year with Sarah waiting until the spring window to commit. Like it just is sort of taking kids are taking more time with it now than they used to. Um, but yeah, I think all three of those, I think they have a very good chance to land. I think they're, comfortably in on all three of them. They don't need a huge class next year. Like they're at a full 15-player roster this year. You only lose AZ Caroline and
Yeah.
Sarah to eligibility. And again, they've been more active in adding transfers the last couple of years. So and Gino does not like to carry a full 15. Like this is the first time they've had 15 on the roster, I think since like the late 90s. Like it's been a really long time since they carried 15. So I think they really only need one or two incoming kids. And I mean I really like all three of those in that like top 20 group that they're in on. Um so yeah, I don't think it's like concerning or anything that they don't have a commit at this point. I think if they hit on one of those three, that's like a successful class. Like those are three like instant come in and can probably play type of kids. Um, and yeah, I mean they have so much youth. They go get a transfer. You have 13, 14 on the roster again. And you're pretty comfortable with that.
Yeah, it's funny. I told Ryan, I said, no personal questions for Emily, today. It's gonna be all UConn Huskies women's basketball, but I have to gear over to the US Basketball Writers Association because we get everybody's take on this, and especially we can't wait to hear what you have to say about it since you've been covering some of the top teams, obviously in the country, for a while now. You quote, and I quote this. You said to them, I feel incredibly lucky to be covering women's basketball at such a pivotal moment for the sport, and I'm so grateful to the USBWA for their recognition, end quote. So I was going to ask you, Emily, as far as women's basketball, I mean, what's your take on, and oh my goodness, I mean, the sport growing, you talk about it growing compared to years and years ago, you could hardly get any fans out, right, at these arenas, at these stadiums. So I know when Ryan, the reason I ask, when Ryan and I experienced our first ever UConn game, what was it, Ryan, about 2, 3 years ago, we traveled up there.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. I mean, we were blown away just at at the emotions, the talent level, just everything, just to see it in front of our eyes. And most, the number one thing obviously was how, deafening. We couldn't. I told Ryan to bring his earplugs the next time he went because we were just shocked. And I'm sure that this is big for you all around. Like sometimes it's no words. How do you feel about it?
Yeah, it's been really cool. I mean, I was really lucky. Like I started the first place I was covering college women's basketball was at South Carolina.
Hmm.
And I mean, that arena is still like one of the craziest environments I've ever been in. Like that arena seats, I think 17, 18,000. And they sell it out often. Like
Yeah.
it's one of those, it's like very vertical. It feels like the fans are on top of you. So like that's still one of my favorite environments that I've ever like covered a game in. Um, and yeah, like coming to UConn, it's Gample's obviously like a little bit smaller, and I like that sort of environment too. Like it's a little bit more
Mhm.
intimate. It's a little bit more like I don't know, like claustrophobic isn't the right word, but like it feels like everybody's kind of packed in, and it makes that sound sort of yeah, like feel like it's even more intense than it is.
Mhm.
But even yeah, just like the turnout at the Final Fours and stuff has been really crazy to see. Like, since that first I've been to what, three now. And I mean every time it is just like completely packed out, like
Yeah.
full house every game. You're seeing like fans from teams that aren't playing are there. The team that's playing in the second game, their fans are all there to watch the first games. So yeah, it's just really cool. Like it feels like a mainstream sport now. I
Yeah.
think it doesn't, and that was always true in places. Like it was always true at UConn. It was always true at Tennessee.
Mhm.
It's been true at South Carolina for, a decade now.
Mhm.
But it feels like it's so much more widespread now. Like it's on a national level. Like it's not just these pockets of like where the top teams are. It really has become like a universal sort of household event.
No, right, about 10 minutes, Emily, if you're good, about 10 minutes left. And I guess Ryan has one more, and then we're gonna get into some comments from our subscribers, if you don't mind, and we'll see what we have from them in the mailbag.
Yeah, well, I know me and Phil went down there last year for that USC game in December, I believe, and it felt like the atmosphere was like a Final Four game. So it really is amazing, whether it's in Gamble or at the XL Center. I guess People's Bank Arena now, right? I think they changed the name. So, but yeah, the UConn atmosphere, no matter where it is really unbelievable, and the WNBA as well. That the game growing and not just in college, but the WNBA now adding another team for the upcoming season. But just quickly, I guess to go along with that topic, what are your thoughts about the NIL? Because I know some people have differing opinions about it, about teams going out and getting all these players. But I think it's mostly good for the game that some of these teams have a better chance at going out, getting some of these bigger name players. But what are your thoughts are about the NIL for college?
Yeah, I think I mean, like on a fundamental level, I think it's a good thing. Like it's good that athletes can make money off of the work that they're doing. Like, we're not calling them employees yet, but they're doing work. And I don't think there's any like denying that they're, getting famous, doing that work. They, have a right to that money. I think it's really gotten sort of, I don't know, like away from the spirit of how it was intended with, especially like I was covering college football, and that is sort of a whole different animal than
Yeah.
you don't see it in the same way in women's basketball, with like the collectives and all of that type of stuff. I think the revenue sharing is kind of a good step in like stabilizing some of that too. But yeah, it's been interesting. Like it's been interesting, especially like at UConn because their program runs so old school. Because like Gino and CD have been around for as long as they have been. the way that they've kind of slowly kind of adjusted to that, and been able to kind of navigate just sort of the different things that like kids are looking for in programs now. And I think it is like it's a huge compliment to them that like their recruiting hasn't gone off a cliff or anything. That it has been as sort of as strong as it ever was in this era too. I think that's sort of one of the most impressive things about what Gino has done over the last 40 years is to have been able to, adjust to so many different eras of the sport and different like rules and even getting through stuff like the COVID year. Like I think it's really unusual, just sort of the sustained success that they've been able to have with so much else kind of going on around it.
For sure. All right, Ryan. So I don't know, Emily, if you catch us any. So the way we work this at the end of every episode, I read comments off to Ryan from our subscribers, and then he elaborates and breaks down what he thinks. So instead of Ryan doing it this time, I want to pick a couple if you don't mind, and then we will let you go. One is from Stevie Kenzie. He goes, I hope to see Yana do big things this year. With Aubrey gone, Yana may be the most athletic on the team. Best case scenario is they all improve their games a little bit. I hope Ash can be more aggressive going to the basket and KK improving her shot. I hope we can see Ice have a breakout, hopefully quicker, lighter on her feet, and more moves down low. And then he says, I want to see Allie have more minutes. Her shooting ability might be a bit overlooked asset the team has.
Yeah, I mean, with Yana especially, like I think that's something, I mean, I think that's something everybody is, even in the building is really excited for and like optimistic about. Obviously haven't seen her play in 2 years, pretty much. Like she has not been on the floor since her freshman year. But the good thing with her is like her injuries have not been the kind of injuries that really damage her athleticism. She had knee surgery in I think her sophomore year. But it was to like repair like a chronic issue, like a tendonitis issue that she had. So she didn't tear anything. It's not they weren't doing like a full repair. And then last year it was shoulder surgery. So like that obviously, impairs certain things, but isn't taking away like your explosiveness, isn't impacting your athleticism. So I think she still has all of that, and it hasn't been on the court. But yeah, I think as long as she's healthy, she is going to be very much the player, that she was when she came in. Once she kind of can get her feet back under her. I don't know, like with Allie this year, it's just a question of like where there's space in that lineup, honestly. I mean, again, like Gino is the type that likes to play his best players for as many minutes as he can play them for. And so it's sort of, especially with like the addition of Heckle, with the addition of Khalees, that is a very, and with Sarah and Caroline and Blanca also kind of being able to do some guard stuff. It's a really full backcourt this year. And so I think, yeah, she's going to have to force him to play her, which is something he says all the time is like, that's you get minutes by forcing me to put you on the floor. But yeah, I mean, she shoots the absolute lights out when she has the opportunity. And so I think if she can get the opportunity, hopefully we'll get a chance to see it.
Yeah, and the disruptive when he says, I feel like Shade has already peaked. I do think she became a better defender last year, but I don't know what areas of her game are open for improvement. I do hope KK improves as a shooter. There were times she didn't have it last year, and it was important to get Chen on the floor. Ice, Ayana, Jana, those are some of the players that could break out. And then he goes, how about AZ? She has never been a national All-American. If her career ended now, she would not be on the wall. AZ is someone we would probably like to see break out.
Yeah, I mean, for AZ, it's just like a matter of playing enough games. Like at this, it's not that like when she's been on the floor, she has, played like an All-American in most cases.
Mm.
But it's hard. Like last year was the first time she's played 30 games in a season. And so it's hard. Like you're not going to beat out, the other 10 top players in the country
Right.
with, a third of the games. But it's, this offseason was her first healthy offseason in a really long time, at least 2 or 3 years. And she, again, like this has been talked about a lot by Gino, by just kind of people inside the program, but I think like coming off of that Final Four really did something positive for her confidence. It kind of, she just has a different demeanor about her this year. And I think there's also like that knowledge that it kind of is her team, you know, it's when you don't have Paige to kind of rely on for the scoring, for the leadership. And so this is kind of her year to like prove it and to, you know, make her statement of, you know, who she is and what her impact can look like. Again, like especially going into a WNBA draft year where, you know, she's eyeing, you know, presumably a top 3 pick. I you know, as long as she gets through this year healthy, I would be very surprised if it's any lower than that.
Yeah, sure thing. One more, just a quick one. Joseph, and then if Ryan has anything left for you, Joseph said, this is my starting 5. Let's see if Emily agrees, right? Point guard, KK, shooting guard, AZ, forward, Blanca, and then he has the 2 Sarahs, Sarah Williams and Sarah Strong in the starting 5.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's impossible. I think like I don't think Blanca will be a day 1 starter. I will say like
Mm,
it's, you know, she wasn't here for summer session because she was still
mm.
finishing high school in Italy. So I think with her it will be more of just like an adjustment period, a figuring things out thing, a like earning trust thing with the coaching staff. Like I said, as long as she's healthy, I would be very surprised if that's not Ashland's spot to lose coming into the year. But if we see a 5 with Blanca at some point in the season, it won't surprise me at all. Just kind of based on the way that they're all talking about her.